every year.
There's a total disconnect now between the ruling group and the masses.
I hate psychology.
Clear out.
They're the same worm-like characters.
Analysts,
Fuck you with your stupid argument.
they should not bother us.
Democracy.
All of this just works.
Vote for the generations who are coming.
Fully dynamic game engine.
A millennial video essayist.
Always support strength
Constant craving.
and identity.
I haven't yearned. They are a disease of our time.
Clear them out. You're voting for what your grandfather and father fought for.
I sit and yearn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. The weeks fly by really fast these days for me. It's just pooping, sleeping, and eating with what we call it, baby walrus, and suddenly, the weekend rolls around. And it's not helped by the fact that, we're properly into sort of the dark times of the year. Actually, we dipped below minus degrees Celsius this week. Today it's like -5. How's it where you live, Luddic Path?
Well, cold. I would be surprised if it wasn't below 0 Celsius. I'm just going to check here. Let's see. Yeah, it's -2 Celsius currently. It was -3 earlier today. It feels colder because of the wind, because I live close to the ocean.
Mm.
But yeah, anyway, good evening and good morning, I guess, or good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're occupying in. And I hope you're having a nice day. I don't know if it's cold in the rest of the world, but it certainly is here.
Yes, and it wouldn't be, when for way too long. So what I do find interesting is that I think Leo Borealis and me must be sort of on the same latitude as the word, right? Because every time he posts about sort of snow falling or dipping below freezing or something like that, it's happening at the same time for me. So I'm able to triangulate where he is based on that. But yes,
good observational skills.
Olaf Ors says, finally winter. I do agree. It's one of those things where, come February or whatever, or March, April, I'm quite sick of winter. But every time, when we get back to November and you get that first crisp day where you're walking outside in the morning and there's like fog, your breath is fogging up, right? It's always nice. I'm always ready for it once again.
It's nice and scenic where I live, right? Because they have street lights and people actually shovel the streets.
Very
so
nice.
You can go for nice walks in a sort of winter wonderlandy environment. Not everybody has that luxury. Not everybody gets to have street lights or actually shoveled streets. But at this time of the year, it's not too cold. It's not too much snow. I also get really sick of it in like February because it's all slop at that point. It's that transitionary period where everything melts and you're walking up with sloppy snow to your knees. It's always a headache, and I just can't wait to get it over. I think February is like the worst month of the year for most people. So,
yeah, it's as with all things, I think we can safely say that the Longhouse is a slop podcast in all its forms.
This is the good slop. It's not the bad slop.
No slop allowed, except the slop that we bring to you, of course. And speaking of slop, I think we'll bring up our first sort of story of the week. We'll start with something a little bit lighthearted, talking about how Elon Musk is now technically the best Diablo 4 player in the world. Now there are some misgivings about that. Apparently, it's a bit of a controversial statement, but if you believe someone like John Carmack, apparently he's a big Musk apologist in the video game sphere, not for his politics, but just for apparently believing that that Musk actually has the time to play Diablo 4 as much as he conceivably has to play to be the number one player. So, tech billionaire and CEO of X, Elon Musk, looks to have become the number one Diablo 4 player in the world after clearing level 150 pit in under 2 minutes. I don't know how many Diablo 4 players there are left compared to other sort of big action RPGs, but I was under the impression it was doing a bit worse. Elon Musk has a pretty.
Isn't it like patch based, and that there are new people coming in now? Or
I
is it?
think they had an
coming in late?
expansion recently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nord, unless gamers are in control, we're so back. Musk has a pretty long resume, what with him being the CEO of multiple companies and now the co-commissioner of something called the Department of Government Efficiency. He's about to add another feather to his cap, however. Musk's status as a Diablo 4 superfan, which is like, if you're going to be a super autist, right, and if you're going to style yourself as like a big nerd, which Musk does, and like big brain, Diablo 4 is like the weirdest action RPG to sort of double down on, in my opinion. Maybe it's because it hits the sweet spot for him, where it's not as hardcore as like doing deep Diablo 2 or something like Path of Exile character building, but it's still enough that he gets a kick out of it, right? It's a sweet spot.
I jumped off the train on Diablo 3. I thought it was kind of disappointing, and so I don't know if you have like Diablo 4 appreciators in the among the viewers, but maybe they could come with some input because I have no clue. Like my first instinct is that this is some kind of pay to play thing. Is that true for Diablo?
Well, 4? I actually bought Diablo 4. I bought into the hype, and I will be eternally shameful and ashamed for it. I just didn't find it interesting. It was laggy because it's like always online, and the build variety, the theory crafting that is possible in that game, at least when I played it on launch, is more or less non-existent. There's like 4 builds maybe. So coming from having my game sort of is Path of Exile, which has been my game for like 10 years at this point. It was certainly a step down. So Musk being like, oh, I'm big brain, I play Diablo 4 is actually a negative for me. I see that. Like, if he really wanted to nerd out on something, he'd play on Path of Exile. So I'm a bit suspicious based on that.
But can you get advantages from paying money or something? Like you can get optimized builds or...
I don't know. I know they put... Like you could
Sorry, maybe I'm roboting or it's you. I think I missed you a little bit.
I'm lagging. One moment. Am I back?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, good.
You have to start it again. I asked you if you can pay.
When I played Diablo 4 at launch, to be honest, like I didn't play it a lot. I didn't finish the campaign or anything like that because I was just bored. But they were like, they had like a shop where you could buy like, oh, your horse, turns into like the demon horse, or here's some skins for your armor, stuff like that. As far as I know, there wasn't the possibility of buying power, like you could in Diablo 3, right? Because you had the like auction house thing where you could pay real world money for gear, which is kind of insane.
But so, in your estimation, what makes you? I mean, what separates the wheat from the chaff in like the top 10, top 100 Diablo 4 players? Is it just time spent, or is it like very skill based?
Having looked into this a little bit, it seems that Musk is hang on a moment. If you look at helltides.com, which is the sort of the website they're linked here, which is the leaderboard, the way they're timing it is like he's number one in speed running the highest level difficulty, whatever Artificer Pit is, right? So, as it says here, the level 150 of Diablo 4's endgame Artificer's Pit is the standard by which players game judge the proficiency. So, if you're able to do it fast, that means your build is really good, right? Because
Okay,
you're
but
doing a lot of damage, right?
but they you said they have like a very limited amount of builds, or is it?
It was when I played it, and the sort of the build, the skill tree, as it were, was very limiting. You know, you could sort of map out maybe 4 builds per class or character, I guess, and anything outside of that was an insane grind, or maybe if you got lucky and got some specific sort of item that unlocked some change, something like that. But it was it felt very constraining, and which is kind of strange coming if you played Diablo 3, which was even more constraining in a way, at least on launch. But Diablo 4 sort of gave you the illusion of choice, but actually there's only like 2 or 3 builds, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, my first thought is that okay, either he's just grinding more than everybody else, or he is actually just legitimately really, really good, which would be strange.
Well, that's
considering
sort of the controversy here, because it says that the feat was achieved using the Quill Volley Spiritborn build, which I don't know what it is. I think Quill Volley has to be like the ability he's using. I'm not sure what a Spiritborn is, which is capable of dealing quadrillions of damage thanks to a persistent bug. Devs at Blizzard have confirmed they won't be nerfing the build until Diablo 4 Season 7. So, like, there's one build that's apparently outperforming every other build because of a bug. So he's playing the most insane build, most likely. And he's also been accused of having people play for him. Because he streams on Twitter, but some people have... on X. Some people have accused him of having someone play for him when he's not around, like doing the grindy bits, and he gets all the glory, which would be insane if it's true, but it's just an accusation. So,
I mean, why not? If you have the money for it, you know. He's so active on Twitter as well. Like I don't know how he can keep up with all this posting. He's not just posting all the time himself, but he has like these other alt accounts, like the Doge Designer and the Elon Facts and all these sort of. It's so weird. Like he's just interacting with these accounts that he's just running himself.
Ozymandias, my video game goblin. It's time for you to farm. Yes, master.
Come here. You can come out of the cupboard now. It's time to
let him out of the cupboard. He lives under the stairs like
South Korean slave.
Yes. Master, I have farmed 1 million gold for you today. Very good. You'll get to keep a sock.
I call him Doge. I call him Bitcoin Doge son. He's my gaming glow. It sounds like something he would do. I'm just kind of surprised that he's competing with like incel South Koreans who are 20 years old with really fast reaction times, and he's able to beat them somehow at
insane reaction times here. This is more about preparation and having a build that's capable of destroying everything. If you look at the video here, you can see, it's a bit blurry, but everything on the screen just kind of dies, right? So this is more in the preparation, and you can't even see the screen. He just blasts everything, right? Which is the sort of end game scenario of these types of games. And the fun is getting there, right?
So he has an industrial infrastructure as Juan, who's playing the game for him, 24/7 doing the grinding. He just shows up to pick up the trophy.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's still
the accusation, which both he and apparently John Carmack, for some reason, is vehemently against.
Oh, that's interesting. He thinks it's legitimate, like he's genuinely sitting 20 hours a day playing.
Well, that's let's see here. We're spending way too much time on Elon Musk's video game legitimacy here, but
this is investigative journalism at the high level.
This is from November 5. Tracing wood grains, because he talked about Diablo on Joe Rogan, which is where this started. Elon starts his surprise Joe Rogan appearance by mentioning that he's one of the top 20 Diablo 4 players in the world, and there are only 2 Americans in the top 20. And then Tracing Woodgrain says, not knowing anything about how Diablo 4 works, my assumption on hearing this is not Elon is a gaming legend, but this system must be gameable with account sharing, playtime-based unlocks, etc. Reaching the top of the world in any pure skill setting takes more time than he has. Again, I think is that the measurement is not necessarily pure skill. It's based on, character preparation, getting the spreadsheets just right. And then John Carmack responds, for those of you who don't know, John Carmack is sort of the big mind behind id. Did a lot of work on Doom. Is credited with a lot of sort of leaps in graphics that happened in the early days of video games. He says, I know it sounds unbelievable, but it's true. He plays a lot on top of everything else he does, and he's incredibly serious about it. My girlfriend tags along behind him on runs to level up fast. So apparently these guys are friends, which makes sense because John McCormack, I think, also works on rockets or something. Armadillo Aerospace. So he programs rockets now. Elon Musk then says, video games are my main non-work, non-family friends activity. It's a bit embarrassing how much I play, to be honest. But the thing is, I don't know how much. When you're someone like Elon Musk, how much do you work every day?
I think the line for him is like very blurred, but it seems to be more common than not with these tech billionaires to be addicted to video games. Like Sam Bankman-Fried, wasn't he hooked on League of Legends? Like he was playing League of Legends during meetings. So he had like the meeting. The job is like second screen content for him. Nice. So I'm wondering if it's kind of the same thing. Like it's just tweeting on one screen and doing Diablo 2 on another. So, well, it's interesting. It's not just me who is wasting time.
Yeah. Bill Wilson says that Longhouse only covers high-quality slop and proceeds to have a long discussion about Elon cheating at video games. Hey, I'll not have Longhouse slander on my own show.
So his 11 kids are out tuning out when he's playing Diablo 4. I guess that's the
what's going on. You joked about, like, listen up, liberals. My wife left me, right?
So, I mean, he literally is that. Though. Yeah. the new Norm show. I don't remember. I linked you that one guy. I don't want to joke too much about it because I assumed it's serious when I looked into the case. It's been like an ongoing thing for a long time. I'm so bad at remembering names. Let's see if I can find the post.
Here it is. Like because Twitter or X, is what it is these days. It rewards, reply guying to Elon Musk at any point. So Ian Miles Chung, for some reason, has something to say about this, and he says there's absolutely nothing shameful about playing video games when you're also doing a whole lot of other things. It's only shameful when it's the only thing you do. So thank you, Ian Miles Chung, for your support of video games. Let's see here. Which just adds to his character, doesn't it? It's actually very consistent when I think about it. You're being replaced. There's nothing you can do. Play video games.
Is he being replaced?
No, like Ian Miles.
Or do you mean? Oh yeah, Ian Miles Chung. Oh, sorry, I missed it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he's. I mean, I assume he gets paid money to suck up to Elon, or maybe it's just algorithmically.
I think it's just beneficial to the algorithm, to reply guy. Okay. Next up, we have another piece of good news. Again, I'm requesting, this. I can't go into detail what the graphic is about, but if you're in these circles, you know what it is. There's this old cartoon of an octopus slowly devouring the world, and it says some very, very unkosher things. I want an edit of that where it just says like the Der Norwegian or something like that, the Norwegian. Jens Stoltenberg becomes head of the powerful elite network Bilderberg. Jens Stoltenberg, who is the former or soon-to-be former leader of NATO, will lead the steering group, the head group in Bilderberg, which every year brings together the global elite in business politics, reports Today's Business. Stoltenberg adds another notch to his belt after resigning as NATO chief on October 1st. In addition to leading the Munich Security Conference, he will co-chair the Bilderberg Group. Marie-José Kravis, president of American Friends of Bilderberg. According to Marie-José Kravis, okay. Combined with a Munich security conference, this is a good platform for collaborating with leaders from politics, business, and academia. It is also an important meeting place to strengthen ties between Europe and the United States, Stoltenberg said to newspapers. I look forward to contributing to Bilderberg's work, he continues. Bilderberg organizes a 3-day meeting where some of the world's most powerful business leaders, politicians, and academics discuss current topics. Stoltenberg has participated for several years and has also been in the steering committee consisting of 34 people. And this was interesting to see sort of Norwegian X react to this, because it really brought out sort of the Q-tardism in a lot of people. Which becomes incredibly strange in a Norwegian context. Sort of Q posting in Norwegian is very strange.
Well, yeah, it doesn't stop them, but the Norwegian X fair is like really sort of first prize, Q, first prize, third position. What I mean by first prize, this is like a Norwegian slang for like, what do you call it, like Dollar General or something in the United States.
It's usually called
store,
white label. You know, you
yeah,
get
this
those
white
like
extremely cheap,
yeah.
badly thought out. But there's so much of it that I've been getting a lot of it after the election as well. I don't mind getting Norwegian stuff, but there's like so many of these Norwegian conservative Q-tard accounts that keep popping up all the time. And I think I didn't post about this, but they have, either they're attacking the Norwegian monarchy or they're attacking Norwegian politicians, or they hate pretty much everything Norwegian that's functioning, basically. And they like, I'll go on this. They like the standard patriot people like Alex Jones and Trump, and they like Putin.
But for like the strangest of reasons as well, when they're pressed on it, it becomes really weird. It's things that would be consistent with an American, but it wouldn't be consistent in the Norwegian context. That's what makes it so weird.
I think they have this sort of strange view that if you'd ask them, let's say if somebody from Israel is participating in the World Economic Forum, right, then that just means that they're controlling the World Economic Forum. But if somebody's Norwegian is participating in it, that means that they're being controlled in it or something. That's kind of the view that they have. So if you are a Norwegian politician or person of interest, rich person or something, you should never participate in international organizations or conferences or something. You should only stay in your
because
cabin.
you're stupid and arrogant and not smart and you're being controlled, but
just
you're also
farm potatoes. Essentially, you should never do anything international ever, because you're just getting exploited by them or like the reptiles or whoever it is, right? So I don't it's not very well thought out. They have this association that they don't like globalists or whatever, and that means that, well, what is it? It's like any institution that is not inside of their own kind of a county or something that's globalism to them.
Yeah,
and they just keep complaining about this stuff. They bring it like, but Bilderberger, isn't that's like a rabbit hole onto itself. It's something that it sounds similar to the WEF, right? But you don't hear much about it. I've not heard much about it before it came up. Now it's just like something that gets thrown around. Like I guess there's some people who are just obsessed about Bilderberger meeting. I assume it was more relevant during like post World War I or something.
What's also interesting is that they have a tendency to, in like one tweet, be incredibly sort of Q-brained, right? Incredibly woke. I hate to use that because it sounds like I'm talking about the woke right or something like that. But be incredibly sort of schizo, right? But in the next, they'll basically be like, "Wow, the Democrats are the real racists," right? And it's just such whiplash.
Well, kind of yes and no, because to them there's some consistency in it. I think the Democrats are more friendly to these types of institutions than the Republicans, right? If you just look at the alliance, if you just try to map out which institutions interact with which internationally, then the Democrats are probably more adjacent to Bilderberger and WEF than the Republicans, or at least in rhetoric, and if you look at the fan base and support group. So I kind of get it. It's just a little bit on the bizarre side for these. If you're Norwegian, to like you take the party of American Republicans, Alex Jones, and like maybe like the one party in Norway that supports that, and it's a very peculiar thing to see. It's hard to understand. I mean, I'm almost afraid to interact with them in a sense. Like
While
I just
also lamenting that Norway is it's over essentially because no politician publicly supported Trump here, right?
well, we're getting to that because there are some politicians that are more kind of Trump friendly or let's say populist adjacent, and you're seeing people making that shift now,
Yeah,
just based on the signals that
true.
are going out. But like they want politicians who are equally schizo as them, and you're only going to get
Yeah.
that with these parties that are outside of parliament that are just below the threshold of what gets any representation.
Yep. So speaking of, here's a surprisingly coherent opinion piece called "Woke is Dead." One of the many consequences of Donald Trump's clear election victory. Now, this is a member of parliament. He is a member of the Centre Party, which is sort of the old Farmers Party, who is now currently sort of in government alongside Labour. So it's a coalition government. So this guy's been around for a while. I've seen his name.
Well,
as
last
far
time
as
we
I
last time we
can
talked
remember,
about
almost.
him, it was related to this sort of insider trading scandal.
That's
That it
true.
was this kind of nothing burger, really stupid thing, and there was many of them that were happening at the same time. But I lamented at the time that he's a very good politician, and it's a shame if he gets raked too hard over the coals because of this stuff. Because you need people like him. So I think he's surprisingly sensible, and I'm seeing a lot of that stuff with the the Center Party and some of the youth wing of this party as well, actually adopting more of this kind of populist MAGA stuff.
Too
In
bad
a
they
way
suck
that's
at actually being at the levers of power, though. But
yeah, they're probably going to lose out in the next election, but at least I see them taking it in that direction, and it's better to at least they have some reasonable people there. It's not like the Norway Dems where they're all kind of on schizo pills, So, but let's read the article.
yeah, let's put the woke away, right? While heads of state around the world seem to be tweaking their golfing skills and reporting duly that they have spoken to the president-elect on the phone, there are some obvious consequences we might as well take in first as last. Here we go. With Donald Trump as president, number one, with Donald Trump as president, the United States manifests its power and position globally, economically, militarily, and culturally. None above, no one next to them. None above and no one next to them. With the combination of a slightly less rule-driven world order and what seems to be a very strong and operational presidency, or a imperial presidency, it is no wonder that everything that can creep everything under the sun, everyone under the sun, is focused around the world's new political center. Number two, Donald Trump went to the election because he wanted change and he wanted disruption. And that's exactly what we're going to get. This is a violation. Hang on a moment. I need to have the Norwegian. I think it's translating wrong. Okay. Yeah, this is a turning point. It's going to be a before and it's going to be an after. 35 years after the US and the West won the fight against communism and their dictatorships, and after an equally long period of globalization, free trade, immigration, the United States as a world police and the United Nations, we're going to see less of all of this in favor of a more national and interest-driven policy. I guess self-interested policy. The main difference from the Cold War is that the Soviet Union is now replaced with China as the main opponent. China. I can't say it like he does. Number three, international politics is going to become more interest-driven. Well, you sort of already said that, but yep. With less room for values, meaning ideology, and the notion that we're protected by trade agreements and rights, foreign policy is woke and is already dead. Yeah, okay. In terms of foreign policy, woke is already dead. I also think that the phenomenon is singing on its last verse when it comes to national politics. So it's on the way out. Number 4, economy, security policy, immigration, and real wage growth for the broad strata of the people will be the main drivers for both national and international politics in the future. Climate, global human rights, gender struggles, and Black Lives Matter will hardly characterize the agenda going forward. One caveat is the fact that few heads of state who matter saw the point of being present at this year's climate summit, which is, whether you like it or not, a huge sort of win for Trump, considering he pulled out of was it the G7? Sorry, the Paris Accord.
Paris Accord, yeah.
Yeah. And then sort of the next time it rolls around, people aren't showing up. Now, of course, there were other reasons for this, but just in a vacuum, this is a huge, huge W for the T-man. What does this mean for Norway in practice? No one around with any sense believes that Berlin and Paris can provide Norway with the security guarantees in line with what London and especially Washington represents. Not only must we take greater responsibility for our own safety and stand on our own 2 feet, which is not at all unreasonable, we also have to demonstrate relevance and mutual benefit where possible. The purchase of weapons, the exchange of intelligence, and the monitoring of the northern regions are all instruments that are irrational to use in order to tie us closer to the United States, probably also through bilateral agreements wherever appropriate. Number 2, more emphasis on economic growth and active management of natural resources. Since both Europe and Norway are lagging behind in international competition, and we can no longer expect to get something free from the US, it will be relatively more important to increase the basis for our own economic growth through what we can and that which matters: oil, gas, energy, fishery, minerals, and forest. To be fair, I mean, we're already making bank on oil and gas especially, ever since like the whole Ukraine thing started. Our own bureaucracy and rule of law should, through a similar horse-drawn cure, hang on, what the hell is going on here? Our own bureaucracy and regulation apparatus should, through a similar sort of vaccination that the U.S. State Department or apparatus is now facing, if we want to maintain competitiveness. So what he's arguing for here is basically paring down bureaucracy, which, easier said than done, but I'm all for it. Number 3, less room for self-marking in foreign policy, meaning that less room for sort of self-establishment, I think.
Virtue signaling, I would assume.
It may be virtue
Might be
signaling.
the proper translation.
Yeah.
But,
Given that it becomes more important to highlight communities of interest with the United States, I predict less room for foreign policy that runs across American interests. If Washington decides that it doesn't like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, it's hardly wise to think something different.
Oh no! Oh no! It's being manipulated. We had the most anti-Israel state in Europe,
and now we're gonna.
Now we have to kowtow. God damn it! They really were putting the woke back, but it means
we really are putting the woke
Netanyahu
back.
wins in the end. God damn it!
Which is funny because I in terms of like anecdotes, I think I know like one person, maybe 2, who is like pro-Israel. Like my entire life, I met like 1 or 2 people who are like pro-Israel. Everyone else is just like they should stop killing people in Gaza. That's the default position.
But I mean, that's kind of the downside of this stuff, right? Because Trump wins, and if I like politicians like this guy, like Bortenboe, and I think he's forward thinking and adaptable.
Well, I guess we're pro-Israel now.
Yeah, lives in the real world, but it's like, okay, what does it mean if Trump wins? Then we have to become more MAGA, right? Okay, what does that mean? 50 trillion to Israel. That's what it's going to mean for Norway, at least. That's like, it means giving up the pro-Palestine posturing, and
which again,
sending
what's
weapons to Netanyahu again.
Parvini's take on this is that the U.S. Hegemon is billionaires who like Israel, right? So number 4, relationship with further European integration. In the sense that right now it is like tying yourself closer to an aging, bankrupt estate. In recent decade, the United States beats both Norway and Europe in terms of productivity, value creation, and innovation. And they have most of the natural resources needed for the development of their own country. It's easy to argue that it's better to be on the team with the winner than the loser. Either way, Norway is wise to join the world of realpolitik first, sooner rather than later. So what this guy is saying is, screw the EU. Let's join. Let's just become like a vassal state of the US fully, and give half our stuff to Israel.
So,
but
yeah,
at least
Mario
we'll be on the
2025.
winning side.
Basically, at least we joined the winning team. Tired of the losers. And I can, I think at least I see the point. It's not. This is not a delusional presentation. It's pretty honest in terms of like, okay, this is what we're gonna have to do if you want to be competitive. He is right, at least in terms of economic metrics, that the US is doing a lot sharper than most other places in the world currently, even though they don't feel like that themselves. It's a very interesting dichotomy. They have the strongest economy in the world, but they're also the people who complain the most about that economy. So there's something to be said for expectations and how to handle that.
That's true. All right. Let's see here. I'm looking through the show notes here. I think we're going to have to talk about. Oh, I didn't prepare this. Oh no. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm going to have to hunt for an article for a moment. We're going to be talking about Brevik. If you could just introduce the topic.
I thought we had some. I think you could probably find it on Google or something.
I do have the topic here.
But he's back in court now, and he's getting a new psych evaluation as well. And as usual, he's rolled out. They want to ask him some questions about like how he feels, if he feels remorse and general questions, and he just uses that time to talk about whatever kind of ideological rabbit hole he's jumped into lately. So I mean, I tweeted about this, but it's kind of dawned on me now because I had some different theories about him and some views about him, but he's just a product of internet radicalization, right? There's it's really nothing else. It's just kind of
he showed up in court this week. I can bring up the other photo as well, with a placard that said, let me save this. And
you should read it out because it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I will find the one moment. How do I do this? Save, downloads. Sorry, everyone. Here we go. So he showed up with this. To be fair, like first of all, he's got the Z tattoo sort of shaved on his head.
He's going for the Teddy Boy Greg look.
Yeah. He says ASAP for Celto-Germanic land back, : support China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Number 1, establish an asylum center in Shanghai, St. Petersburg, Tehran, and Pyongyang.
So just as a footnote here, CH is actually the country code for Switzerland, and CN is for China. But
that's true.
I mean,
yeah,
I guess just based on the context, it's easy to infer that it's the BRICS alliance or the.
I assumed it was China.
New axis of evil that he's going for.
Yeah. Industries from there. All dollars for Nordfront.se, which is some right-wing website in Sweden.
Well, it's the Swedish branch of the Nordic resistance movement. So I was looking a little bit at it. They have a lot of articles. I'm going to get into reading a bit and seeing what I can draw from that. But they've taken a pretty sharp Eurasianist turn. I mean, I looked at their site, I think about a year ago or maybe 16 months ago or something, and they were sort of ambivalent, I think, about Ukraine. They're still very much sort of anti-Zionist. That's kind of their main thing. But now they're going sort of hardcore pro-Russia, and you could see that's probably where he picks it up at. They were actually translating a lot of Eric Stryker's articles on that website to Swedish. So I assume that this is like Eric Stryker by proxy through Anders Behring Brevik that we're looking at in this photo. So I don't know if you have the interview, but it's one where he is where they ask him and he try to explain himself, and he talks about like how he's a soldier for China and Iran to prevent white genocide or something. It's just like pure internet stuff. He's sort of gone from the.
He's even doing, the white power sign from like 2016, which wasn't even the white power sign. A bunch of lefties thought it meant white power, right? And I know like some Stormfront people sort of picked it up, but it just goes to show that how much sort of internet brain this really is, right?
I'm not sure if it's even from there. He did something like this on the other trials as well. If this is some kind of like if he's still into the Templar stuff.
But I thought he seems to have dropped the Templar stuff, because that was the thing he ran hard with in his manifesto, is that he was sort of like literally the White Knight Templar accelerationist kind of thing.
It's the Crusader stuff, like that. That's what the original vision that he had. The counter jihad, counter jihad, anti-cultural Marxism, Crusader. So I think if you look at this guy, he's almost like a kind of bellwether for like where internet radicalization takes you in the current years. So whenever they roll him out, whatever he's talking about, that's what's going on online. I assume that's all he's doing is just sitting on his laptop or something in his cell. And
I mean, it has to be, right? And that what kind of I don't know if I want to do the rant I did to you, but it sucks for me personally, because I'm not going to go into details, but I was affected greatly by what he did, and for a long time I sort of, part of my intellectual journey has been, in a philosophical and intellectual sense, understanding what he did, understanding his accelerationism, that what led him to do what he did, right? And sort of coming to terms with, all right, this was either someone who's crazy, right, who's actually just clinically insane, or this is the people who died as victims of an enemy ideology, which might sound harsh, but it's in a weird way a way for me to sort of, I guess, archive it. But looking at where this has taken him now, and what he's doing now, it just tells me that this guy was always just a retard who spent too much time on 4chan, and now he's a retard who's been reading too much Russia Today, which means he's just a retard. Like, the people who died for literally nothing, and that really makes me upset.
Really, really painful, and condolences again for that, because I mean, if you live in the southern parts of Norway, right? I mean, the Labour Party is kind of the main, the dominant party in Norway, the centrist party, and if you didn't know somebody who died there, then you knew somebody who knew somebody, and if you didn't know somebody who knows somebody, then you knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. I mean, that's like almost the entire country if you're from that general area. I remember like people that I worked with that had people who had lost someone there or knew somebody. So
and I had a family member, close enough family member die. I know exactly how they died. I know that he didn't shoot to kill. He shot to harm, and I still meet their mother regularly, and the pain never leaves her eyes. Knowing that it's for nothing makes me more angry than knowing that it was, weirdly enough, knowing that it was for something as twisted as it might have been, right? But knowing that this guy's just a retard makes it 10 times worse.
It's absurd. It's totally absurd.
So do we want to read this, or
I don't know, just some more comments on this, because again, like Norwegian Q Twitter is commenting on this stuff, and like the amount of sort of self delusion and psyoping and coping they're engaged in, like because the Q Twitter is like the pro Russia Twitter, right? And they're like, well, what if the C was for Zionists? Have you considered? It's just,
Oh no.
yeah, that's kind of that's where they're going with this. Is like, yeah, no, the C is actually for Zionists. So he's not actually associated with the anti-war, peace in our time crowd. Yeah, I think it's pretty lame too, to be honest. It like as soon as I saw that, it did kind of just completely deflate the balloon in my head of some of the mystique around the guy.
Yeah. It would have been better if it was just actually insane.
Maybe I should try to revisit his manifesto. I know I read it at the time, and I mean, you're not reading all like 1,000 pages of it or whatever, but I tried to read some parts of where he's talking about himself, because the stuff that he wrote is actually interesting. It's not all that stuff he plagiarized from Kaczynski or whatever.
Yeah. Do we want to move on to education, or do
Yeah,
we
sure.
want to do? Not sure if I want to do happenings. There's been some happenings in the Ukraine, but we'll hold off and see how far we get with the
Nothing ever happens.
the
I'm all in on nothing ever happens.
Let's see here. Okay. So, there's actually two things. I'm actually gonna go with this first, because this is a short one. It's just more of a report that I want to do, and that is that the conservatives, or what's called the right in Norwegian, but basically conservatives, is losing a lot of ground. It's ceding a lot of ground to the Progress Party, which, everywhere else in Europe as well. You have your Alternatives for Deutschland. You have your I don't remember all of these sort of like slightly right-leaning parties who are, communicating that, hey, we're actually going to do something about immigration, surging forward, right? So
I mean, this is like a fantasy map. If you talk to me 4 years ago or something, like some
Yeah.
some like right wingers' wet dream to have this thing. Like it's not a right left majority. It's going to be a Progress Party majority coalition. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, it is, and it's going to be interesting to see next year when there's an election, how much of a landslide it's going to be for this party, and if it's going to change anything. That the nothing ever happens thing. Is this going to be containment? Is it going to be something real? We'll have to wait and see.
Because I was curious about this. Like, Norway do not participate in the EU elections. We're just in the what do you call it? I don't remember the English name for that agreement that we're in, like the economic stuff. But the EU elections, as we covered, went very far to this kind of nationalist Eurosceptic direction, but not in Scandinavia. Sweden and Finland actually voted further left, so they were the exceptions to the rule. So I was curious if that would be true for Norway as well. Like our climate would be a little bit sheltered from this sort of populist wave, but it doesn't seem like that at all.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I mean, it's still early polling, but it's interesting because it seems that people are crossing the aisle here, right? It's not just siphoning from the conservatives. It's taking from like the center and possibly even from Labour, right?
Who's losing here? See, the Reds on the left are losing.
The Liberals and the Conservatives, then Labour, and the Communists and the Communist Lights, the Socialist Left, are gaining slightly here. But you can see that the amount that's being lost on the left isn't really being gained that much. Maybe they're going to the center here. Maybe that's what's happening.
So it's a slight. It's a little bit hard to see if I can zoom in a little bit on them because it's hard to see the signs. Maybe I'll just look at the color. No, that's better. So get slight gain for the socialist left. Slight the environmental, the Greens remain about the same.
Tetrarch says it's not gonna happen like never before. In terms of the Progress Party, the levels of not happening will be historical.
So there's some gains in these sort of below parliamentary parties as well. So the Christian Democrats are up a little bit. Yeah, I've seen the Christian Democrats doing a lot of anti-woke stuff as well. I mean, that it seems to like there's been a sort of green light to do anti-woke stuff. So I actually suspect that the Christian Democrats might take a lot of the power from the conservative, what do you call, like the hard right Christian party. And so I think that like the mainstream are going to be anti-woke, and the below parliament people are just going to be Q-tard. That's at least what I'm looking at Twitter, because I'm following people from all these parties, and I'm seeing the change in rhetoric, so that the anti-woke kind of like Chris Rufo stuff, that's going to be what you're hearing in the standard
baseline
party. That's the baseline, and the and the below parliament is like the sort of WEF Q boomer stuff. The gold standard. We're gonna have Bitcoin as the national currency on the gold standard. Removing all vaccines
linked to the gold standard. That's the way it's going to be. All right, so let's talk about edumacation, because I have two. I mean, we're probably going to be retreading ground, but it's interesting to see this sort of develop. First, I have a bit, slightly drier, a bit of a back and forth between two academics about sort of the state of and the increase of the number of universities in Norway. So this is written by a guy called Bernd Hagtvedt, who is the professor of political science at the University of Oslo, and he says the state budget shows the power to focus on research and education in our wealthy country. Flags are waving in the city and at the port. Lillehammer has become a university town. Now the country gets its 11th university through the University College of Innlandet, which is the inland, literally, getting its university status. Soon the College of Western Norway will follow suit, and then we'll have more than 12 universities. How did we end up here? Now, that being said, in a country as, well, it's long, right? But we got 5 million people, 12 universities that's a bit much, right? It's because we're facing a magnificent example of Orwellian newspeak. A few people take the trouble to dwell on the massive concept of content emptiness that this use of university concept means. He's talking about calling things a university, essentially. A streetcar doesn't become a Jaguar just because you're starting a Volkswagen a Jaguar. Or I guess he's saying a Volkswagen doesn't become a Jaguar just because you start calling it that. The requirement for university status has been systematically dismantled by various governments. A doctoral program is sufficient, but no one really asks what kind of degree this will be without a voluminous advanced graduate school around it, which is a matter of course at normal universities. There are doctorates and introductions to whole subjects, along with demanding introductory courses that provide breadth and depth. Doctoral degrees are not overgrown graduate tasks on top of thin master's degrees, as is currently the case at these Norwegian pseudo-universities. So what he's saying is, he's using a bit of difficult language here in Norwegian, which is tripping up the translator. But what he's saying is, doctorates usually are incredibly deep and hard, and entire sort of study fields on their own. But a lot of these doctoral degrees are sort of, as he says, graduate tasks on top of thin master degrees, meaning that they're being watered down, essentially. In Sweden, the Minister of Education stops all new universities for fear of quality deterioration. No one asks those who will accept these candidates in their professional lives. Do they see themselves served by such weak people? I guess he's saying, like, weak-legged people. Rankings will force their way through. After this conceptualization, the requirement will come about through will bring about a tougher ranking of Norwegian universities. Worse, any central universities are forced to keep their own entrance exams for graduates of these pseudo universities. For now, it becomes impossible to know what they actually know. So, real sort of proper universities, he says, will have to introduce more and more checks and balances to make sure that the people who are accepted are actually good, and make sure that the quality that they produce are better than these sort of light universities. Soon, foreign educational institutions will also follow suit, because Norwegian higher education will receive a miserable reputation. What happens can only be classified by 2 words: intellectual harakiri. Interesting. Based use of glorious Nipponese language.
Sounds dramatic. I was thinking something like educational.
I remember
innovation or
reading this
something,
too.
but,
He's using
yeah.
extremely flowery language. This is a joy to read in Norwegian, by the way. Like, the translator is not doing him justice. At best, this new university, specifically the one that's inland, will become the new Potemkin Elise, which is in terms of false facade, it's from the, like, Potemkin. Is this a Soviet thing? Like, where it's all just a play. Regional populism prevails, and against it even the gods fight in vain. Based. The question that arises is quality decline the necessary price for democratization? Yes, always. True to my words, soon the administration will push the professionals to cut down their demands to get as many people as possible through the door. It will increase flow through. This is what everything has revolved around until now, under the name of quality reform. And this is true. I mean, I've argued for a long time that the sort of incentive structure for universities in Norway is, backwards. It's not prioritizing quality, it's prioritizing quantity of students. Worse times are coming. It is now impossible to maintain any academic quality. The academic staff becomes hostages for the accounting departments. We're now focusing on accounting, not knowledge. Let me demonstrate how this happens. Tomahawk says, "Can you read a paragraph in Norwegian?" I mean, I could. I could read the entire thing in Norwegian, but it's quite long. Let me show you how this happens. This is the peace prize system, meaning it's a results budgeting orientation, which means that there's a payment for each student who's on. Hang on. What's he saying here? Goose-livered Strasburger. He's using some incredible language here. In a Strasburger goose way. Okay, he's using a very specific thing here. I'm not sure if I can translate that. He's saying that the payments are released for each student who barely makes it through the program, and results in a predictable leveling of the quality. We get the candidates through, so to speak, at all costs. Again, the university is incentivized to push as many people through as possible. It's not very interested in getting people, knowledge. It's Catherine the Great. Okay, yeah, that was the Potemkin. Okay. Soon the simplification and cutting of requirements will spread to all areas. A Norwegian master thesis will be reduced from 60 academic points to 30. It is already now a pale comparison to the old graduate thesis. They will be roughly in line with old semester assignments, and experience degrees with even thinner content is going to make a lot more money. Examen philosophicum, which is where you basically it's a requirement for a lot of studies. Is it part of the trivium? I believe it is. It's philosophy. It's of course somewhat of a drag. Let's move away from this glare of obsolete standards. The history of thinking continue to remove this and any factual doctrine. It is too difficult for the students of today. So this guy's really old man, yelling at clouds here. Except he's is out because that's too difficult, and it's going to be too difficult for the students in the future. Nordan says, "I liked X-Film." Well, I did too. It was good stuff. Except the method version was a bit more of a drag, not the philosophy. Field work for anthropologists. Add them to NBUC. It's cheaper, which is a different place. Training method in social sciences, that's a luxury. Method being like the academic methods of performing social science, of performing statistical modeling. Freedom of choice to orient themselves in several subjects before choosing a concentration. That is not bill saving, so we're going to remove that. So again, he's saying it's going to be like one track. Foreign languages will no longer be necessary. Quote, in this country, we have oil to fall back on. It's enough to order one cerveza in the Canaries. Nynorsk, which is the sort of second language here in Norway, is also going away, according to this guy. A romantic bell hung from the 1800s Danish hatred. Okay. This guy is okay. Key are the wordy short courses. To read books is the domain of old white men. It is unmodern and it's too expensive. I should probably just try to live translate this because I think I'll do a better job than.
The translator is struggling here.
Yeah.
It illustrates his points. You have the education, you should do it yourself.
Yeah.
You get the old man energy on point.
And even grander, as the new, quote, university at Lillehammer is going to do, is co-writing. Co-writing is Orwellian for forced writing. The point is to save money by forcing the students to deliver their sort of end of year tasks as groups. Those who can't find partners will be left in splendid isolation. And thus, the new university cannot afford to have their students write individual bachelor or master theses, and especially in subjects where specifically the individual's work is of paramount. This happens at a school where the quality of the studies, especially the teacher-student relationship, has been the great advantage, and the parity is perfect. Let's see here. Research. The Minister for Research and Higher Education, Oddman Hall, is himself educated in history. He has to stop this embarrassing dilettantery. He's using a fantastic language. I love this. A defense of democracy. In a time of irrationality, science, hatred, and authoritarian powers in stride all over the world, the universities have to be shored up and not built down as they're being now. We need sharp and deep courses in logic, method, source criticism, theory of democracy. All of these things are sort of the first antibodies or the lines of defense for democracy. Society becomes more and more scientific. The students need to understand what a good reason, what good reasoning is, what science really is, what research really is, and what science ethic is, what academic attitude and what factual information gathering is, what disciplinary intellectual curiosity about humans, society, our nature is. Jesus. This institution now is involved in a national leveling process. The lack of aversion to this is conspicuous. Students are protected by their ignorance about what a good university is. We should require more of the students. I'm about halfway through. Do you want to keep going?
And this is a bit of a slog, I think.
The point is, this
I-
guy is raving against, the universities watering themselves down.
Revolt against the modern world.
Exactly. He
But
is
how would you
writing
summarize?
more.
What's the problem? Is it too little quality, too many universities, inflation,
There's too many universities
Yeah.
with the with sort of the there's this because the bureaucracy, because the municipalities are sort of rewarded by having universities. So chasing, if you are in one of the sort of the regions, the districts, right? If you can get a university tag on your local, institution, that's really good because you're going to get a lot more people. And it doesn't really matter if what you're delivering is of quality, right? You just
The
need that university tag.
diploma mills, I guess, would be
Exactly. Yeah.
the direction here. Yeah.
So that's what this guy is raving against, is that we're sort of diluting what a university means, which is then also diluting what an education means. And speaking of diluting what an education means, this is why I had the other article here. This is called this article is called sort of the Sixer inflation. Now, in Norway, we don't use A to F in lower levels of school. When you get to university, you get graded A to F. But before that, you get graded from 1 to 6, where 1 is an F and a 6 is an A. And in high schools across the country, it is here, more top grades are now awarded than ever. And here you can see a graph from 2009 to 2023. About 6% nationally are awarded top grades, and these days it's more than doubled. The proportion of 6s, of A's, have more than doubled in 15 years. Quote, "Why am I not getting a 6, an A? Do you not like me?" Associate Professor Caroline Torkelson hears this more and more from her students. Students and parents are pushing hard for the best possible grades, says the teacher. Let's see here. We call it the inflation of 6s, or the inflation of A's, and the experts are sounding the alarm. The rating system is completely out of control, according to a professor. In 1999, Elizabeth Lee was a sensation. She was named Student of the Year at Oslo Handelsgym, which is the business school, and the applause was ringing during the solemn ceremony in the gymnasium. The girl with the pearl earrings was listed in Aftenposten for her feat as the only one in that school who received top A's, who used only A's for her position in her grades. So she got top scores. That's what she won. One generation later, in 2024, she wouldn't have been as unique. In the last 15 years, the number of top grades in Norwegian students' diplomas has exploded, according to figures from the paper. According to figures the paper has collected and analyzed. The proportion of 6s, of A's, in the common courses, which is like math, what it probably says, English, geography, PE, math, Norwegian, written and oral, social studies, and religion. So the common course is so it's not like if you take like a year of programming Java. Cool. This isn't counted, but the proportion of A's or 6s in the common courses has increased by 150%. One Friday afternoon in September, Associate Professor Caroline Torkelson rushes into a classroom at Ullern High School. Students are going to be tested in revolutionary history. During the weekend, at home from her own living room, she will then send them their grades. The students are sitting down on chairs that stand around high bar tables. The teacher says, remember that not everyone gets the grade of 6, even if you dreamed about it and you wrote about it in your, this is like the ambition diary, she says to the students. Torkelson then steel herself for the reactions. When she doesn't hand out the top grade, that's when the reactions come. She shows the papers emails that she has received. I now do like you the time you asked for a higher salary when you started working. Quote, okay, I need a good grade this semester to get a good chances as possible to get into the schools I have applied to. Although I see the chance may be small, I really need an A, a 6. Let me know if there's anything I can do to raise my grade, etc., etc. So they're sending, her messages like, I'm trying. Is there anything I can do to get a top grade? I hear from the students that I'm ruining their future, that I'm the one standing in their way, in the way of them and their dream. That it is I who make sure that they fall outside of the norm. There are phone calls or an email from a mom or a dad. Torkelson has worked as an associate professor for 10 years and teaches Norwegian and history. She is also the second deputy leader for the Norwegian lecturer team. And the pressure has escalated, she says. This pressure is terribly uncomfortable and tough to endure. It is exhausting to meet students who demand these things all the time. Ullern upper secondary school is one of the so-called top schools in Oslo. At these schools, every third grade is now a top grade. It concerning the common courses. Torkelson notes an increasing requirement for more people to pass. When more people get a 2, the grading scales are pushed upwards, she points out. The old 2 is now a 3. So the old, what's that, an E, becomes a D.
Yeah,
The grade points.
in the United States, I know that they don't use the E grade. I went studied abroad for a year, and you get a D or you get an F.
Yes.
I've never seen anybody get the E, but in Norway you actually use the 2. That's a plausible scenario that you can get a 2, whereas a 1 is a failing grade. Yeah.
Fred Worm says sexual favors. I doubt it, but for those of you in the chat, the image is here for your consideration.
Yeah, it's one of those teachers.
Yeah, and that's him. Eicher Shredder Gorsburr. Okay.
I don't know, yeah, but I do think about it. Like when I went to school, I just kind of took the L when I had to. I don't remember ever asking about it. I didn't learn about that until I went to college. That you could complain about grades, and that's the sort of way to optimize once you get there. But
you're at a level where you should be able to defend your grade, right? I do remember having discussions with professors about grades where you basically entered into a bit of a tussle with them intellectually, and if you won, you got a grade up. If not, you might get bumped down one, right?
Yeah, but you also have the right, I think, to just complain. If you're not happy, you can get a new.
You do, but then it
revision.
Becomes like anonymous, and someone else looks at it, right?
Yeah,
it's not the same thing, really.
But with these kids, it's I don't know what I mean. What's happened here? Is it that the tests are getting easier? Is it that they're more conscientious about like career paths early on, and they know like they need to have an exact scorecard to get into veterinary school or whatever? Like they just are very clear. I mean, that's the signal I'm getting, at least, that they're
there's some
more career oriented.
Thoughts about it here. So the grade points is what it's all about. Students are fanatically interested in it. And to be fair, in Norway, when you're going to a university, what you are sort of what determines whether or not you get in is straight up, how good are your grades after a certain point, of course. Baskets. This is not baskets to heaven. This is curves that go all the way to heaven, resembling a success story. He's talking about like gray, sort of like in a graph curves. But researchers, teachers, and professors that the magazine has talked to says the same as Torkelson. Something is up. The top grades are too loose, according to several of them. They call it a that's a unfortunate mistranslation. It's an inflation of top grades. If this continues, in a worst case scenario, we can no longer trust the grades, says Henning Fjordhoff, kind of what the other professor was saying earlier. And if that happens, drastic changes must be made, but there are a few alternatives, he says. If everyone gets an A, well, what should schools and universities do to distinguish? The Directorate of Education also agrees that measures have to be taken. We currently do not have sufficient knowledge about what is the basis for this development, according to Divisional Director Martha Axelson. The powerful burst of the number of top grades is the same throughout the country. If you ask students, getting a grade 6 becomes a status symbol. As the graduates of Elvebacken Upper Secondary School says, a 6 means awesome, a 5 means perfectly fine, and a 4, well, that's quite brutal, says Angelica Jen Scarsone. Her school is one of the most difficult to get into in Oslo, and has been that way ever since it started doing sort of grade-based intake in 2009. So that's interesting, though. The intake into the school became grade-based, which means that the only people who are sort of allowed in has to have a high average from middle school. But the number of A's has nevertheless increased and increased year by year. So last school year, 50% of all grades were an A. That's insane. 40%, sorry. If 40% of your grade is top grade, that means that something is wrong, right?
Well, I mean, some of the classes I went through, they weigh it, right? So there's only going to be 10% who gets an A, regardless. But I don't know if the
university
testing
level, that's
criteria is.
usually how you do it, right? Because you have people from so sort of differing experience levels, so you weigh it based on the results. So if one guy did really well, then that's the standard everyone else has to meet. There's upsides and downsides because it makes sort of the quality bar fluid. But you at least avoid this, where the numbers just stop making sense.
So I don't know if the testing has changed. I don't know if it says anything about that, but when I was studying abroad, in the United States, they use a lot more multiple choice questionnaires where they just scan the papers when you're done. And then it kind of makes sense that you have a lot of people getting A's or something if you pay enough attention. But if you have like these kind of free essay format tests, then you can grade them on a curve, depending on like comparing the best to the worst. And at least you could have like the majority gets a 4 or something, or a C. That would be the equivalent. That's usually like, okay, this is the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
It should always be the baseline, but unless it's a poor performing class.
Of course. What's also interesting, I don't think I have the graph, but there is a graph of high schoolers showing that like the past 5 years, girls have gotten a lot more neurotic about school, like stressed at school, while boys have gotten less stressed. So I think what it's saying is basically, the boys are giving up and the girls are just winding themselves up even more. Like is quite a significant sort of change past 10 years.
Interesting, but also troubling.
Merit. Such merit. After the graduation time, students will move on to universities and colleges that require high scores. Thea Hillestad wants to be a doctor. On her diploma, she has one. She only has 1 5. The rest are 6s. For her, only 6s are good enough. Statistically, what's funny about this is, statistically, this woman will turn out not being a doctor. A very minor portion of women who educate themselves to be doctors end up actually working as doctors, which is the great sort of, I guess, dilemma that's facing us now. That we're spending a lot of resources educating people to do things that they're not educated in, or to just sort of not do the thing they educated themselves into doing.
Well, I mean, do you mean they're not going to have like a standard? I don't even know the English, like the international term for it, but you have the
General practitioner.
Yeah, the general practitioner style doctor, but that she might get. She will be working in the medical fields, right?
Yeah, but
I
she
assume
won't.
that's what she meant,
Okay,
yeah.
but okay. The mismatch is that they don't end up doing the jobs, the medical jobs that we desperately need. They don't end up doing the general practitioner jobs. They don't end up doing the surgery jobs. They don't end up doing the um, is it oncology? No, that's cancer. I forget. Um, but they'll end up doing jobs that are less high pressure in terms of what the society needs. It might be different now, but I remember looking into this years and years ago because this was a sort of discussion thing, and when you look at the statistics and you sort of pare down, you can try to see like how many women quote unquote survive to the end of like a surgeon's position, and it's almost no one.
Peterson was right.
Peterson was right. Let's see here. Her classmate Conrad Vettlesater will keep all of his doors open. To get a 6 from the teacher, they know what it takes. It's hard work, they say, and they also have a checklist. The teachers show us quite clearly what one has. Giga Chad, just it's there in the paper. Just do it. just don't be bad.
Skill issue.
They read the assessment criteria and the curriculum carefully, and they're conscious of using subject words and concepts such as cultural, historical context, or literary means, which is great. Words that don't always feel completely natural to use, Angelica admits. They know they must appear confident and not hesitant. They must give the impression that they can do more than they can say out loud in 1 hour. And then they have to close their computer, keep eye contact with the teacher, raise their hand. They have to speak directly to the teacher, and they have to tell them what their ambitions are, and it's a 6. Angelica recognizes herself in what the doctor at Ullern says. When they get reviews in return, there's always someone asking for an explanation of the grade. It may feel fussy for teacher, but for us it's about understanding how we can improve the grade, she emphasizes. Thea says that they don't press or nag the teacher, they ask them what it takes to do better next time. Well, I think there's a bit of both. As long as no threats are used or the pupil is not being extreme in their pressing, or you cannot blame the pupil for wanting to get a good grade. And you can't blame them for being disappointed when they get a bad grade, she says. It is actually the teacher's job to resist the pressure. Well, I don't know about that. Depends on the subject. Previously, it has been proven that the pandemic years gave a jump in the grading, but the magazine analysis showed that the 6s are again just as fluent as before. The figures only apply to the position grades in the common subject. In physical education and Norwegian oral exams, the increase is most marked. Here, the proportion of 6s has more than tripled. But also in the social studies, history, religion, and science, the top grade has made a powerful burst. The exception are the subjects that are most measurable, namely math. So this is what you were talking about, Ludwig. So it's sliding in everything that isn't sort of objective. Interesting.
Okay, so they're doing shit in mathematics. Let me see that again there. Gym, everybody's doing
well in gym. Is
that's
the
like
teacher
a
like
PT
afraid of getting
stuff,
called, called a sexist or something?
Yeah, I think so. And it's like, well, you made an effort, right? A for effort. That's pretty lame, actually. I thought you'd have to. Yeah, I assume they just have to adopt, and everybody has some asthma or some kind of chronic problem or something.
Maybe.
Well, at least you tried. So, well, yeah, this is like pretty lame, actually. This should not happen.
Here, I feel like there's a good MDE skit somewhere in here as well. I have to think about it for a bit.
This is actually pretty awful. I was hoping that they'd be doing better in math or something, and they would. What I was hoping is that they become more like South Korean. They're studying harder. But this just This
They're
is
just
just
nagging the
touchy
teacher
feely
more.
stuff. They're just complaining.
Could it be that the students are actually getting better? Hardly, according to researcher Fjortoft. He refers to the much discussed PISA studies that Norwegian 15-year-olds are actually getting weaker. And while the standpoint weaker, in their scores, and while the standpoint grades, meaning like the final grades, are pointing upwards, the exam grades are not following the same path. So they're doing better at sort of like collective final grades than they're doing on the exam grades, meaning that they're basically just pushing the teacher into giving them more grades over time, or they're doing better in situations where they can be more fluid than in an exam where you have to deliver sort of here and now. As is well known, exam grades are set by an external censor. Exactly, it goes to someone else, which does not know the student behind the answers. National tests are also no success story. When results improve on one measurement point, the final grade, but not the others, it's cause for concern, he says. The magazine has contacted several leaders for prestige studies in Norway, such as medicine, psychology, and industrial economics, where admission requirements are quite high. First-year student level is consistently high, they say, now as before. Marit Olio is the vice dean of the medical faculty at University of Bergen, and this year 2,600 candidates fought for 135 seats. And she says she finds it difficult to sort them all. There are very small margins that separate those who get a spot from those who do not get a spot. We cannot guarantee that we will get the most suitable people. It will be almost like a lottery, says Olio, who fusses a little over the density of top characters in the application box. I don't know why it keeps translating this to the intimacy word. We see more and more people who have full card fully. We see more and more people who have it all figured out. On paper, they're geniuses. But it's not really, the magazine asks. Nope, today's students probably know other things than the lectures before them, but my impression is that they're not much smarter than before. Professor Kjell Berg has conducted research on grading and assessment in school, and he is crystal clear. The reason for the high proportion of sixes is not that the students have become better. There's nothing to suggest that Norwegian students have improved in anything. Wow. Shut down. So what is different than before? It depends on who you ask. If you ask Elizabeth Lee, the star student from 1999, she will answer that her recipe for success was something like this. Regular basic hard work, no meeting her friends on weekdays, and no organized leisure activities. She also had no extra work on the side. Several hours a day went into her schoolwork. Time thieves like social media didn't exist in 1999. Anyway, things were a little easier back then. We didn't use the internet. We didn't have to deal with so much more than what was in the textbooks, she says. Today, she is a heart doctor at Oslo University Hospital. Wow. She's one of the few who made it through, Leddick. I rescind my position. I have been blown the fuck out by one example that goes against the statistic average. The key to getting a good grade in Norwegian was for my part to read the paper, specifically this paper. The world back then was a little smaller. In the fall of 2024, in classroom 344 at Elvebakken, the students discuss who has the most ethos of Kamala Harris, Mette Marit, and Sophia Elise. Wow, this is a nightmare blunt rotation. So this is Kamala Harris, the Norwegian crown princess, and some Norwegian blogger. No doubt, says Conrad, Harris has the most credibility and integrity. Ah, fantastic. Top grades for you, Conrad. You had the right answer. Eager hands are flying in the air as the class discusses to the last moments. It's between the two Norwegian women. In this class, Conrad and Thea are not allowed for having many top grades on their diploma, and it concerns everyone. Conrad has so far received top grades in all subjects, -2 5s. From the first day of school, he gave his everything. In his spare time, he clears up time to work on school, but he also has engaged in the review. Oh, in theater, he plays football and he's a climber 5 times a week. Jesus, that's exhausting, dude. Like, at what time? Like, when do you have time to be a kid, right? These days. Angelica also has only 6s on her diploma. It feels a little embarrassing to say it, like I'm bragging, but it's something I'm proud of. She admits that she puts a lot of pressure on herself. I've always had a drive to be perfect, she says. And proof of that is that I have good grades. The principal of the school, Camilla Horan-Leivik, explains the many top grades at the school with high entry requirements. We are very keen to compare ourselves with other schools to find out how we're doing, she emphasizes. Therefore, they constantly compare position grades with exam results. She tries to turn the problem on its head. If the grading scale had gone up to 8, many students at Overbakken would have received higher grades, she believes. Well, I mean, you're just playing with numbers at that point, aren't you? I mean, maybe it would work.
Yeah.
She received few complaints about the grades from her students. The teachers here are steady, and they're used to be exposed to pressures, he says. It is clearly important for students to get that result in the end, though. Let's see if we can keep going. Okay, now they talk more about like teachers being pressured by the parents, which is something we haven't gone into a lot. But I think we made our point. The Department of Education are saying they want to have a look at the grading going forward and see if we should make any changes, essentially.
Yeah, I've sometimes the simplest is probably the easiest, right? I mean, I've counter-signaled a lot of these standard right-wing solutions, but I think in this case, the solution is just more men, less women. I think the women are fucking...
More male teachers, is that what you're saying?
More male teachers, just more male people in positions of power in the schools, generally.
Mm.
They need to say no. They need to be told no. Everybody in the system has to be...
That would be...
yeah.
Probably effective. Yeah. Okay, well, it's an hour and a half. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, but it's been fun. Ludwig Path, before we leave, anything you want to shill?
Well, you can follow me on Ludwig Path, Twitter if you like, and maybe check out my YouTube channel. So I'll put out a new video on Brevik, I think, this weekend.
Very nice.
Hopefully. Other than that, nothing. So yeah, it was fun.
It was fun. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter as well. And you could also check out the Shieldings event in Germany next year in April, from the 25th to 27th, where I will be one of the speakers alongside some various German influencers, as well as Carl Benjamin Sargon of Akkad, including a mystery guest speaker. So you can have a look here at shieldings.com. The event is the Carl Stage 2025. All right. With that, I think it's time to wish everyone a good evening. Actually, now that I think about it, I won't be able to make it next week. So we won't have any Longhouse next week. I have my wife is going to a Christmas party with her work, and so I have to watch the kid, unfortunately. And I don't dare try to do
too longhoused for the Longhouse.
I've been longhoused by the Longhouse. To be fair, I have the Christmas party for my work the day after, which means that she has to stay home and watch the kid. So it's, for now, it's balanced out. Maybe we can do the Longhouse. Maybe I'll get a thing where, I pawn the kid off to my mom or my mother-in-law. Escape the Longhouse for real. We'll see. But just be prepared for no Longhouse next week. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your day, if there's anything left, and have a good weekend. And we'll see you, if nothing else, in about 2 weeks. Bye-bye.